Welcome to the JP8 Report. This is James Pierce with JP8 Report. This is episode 18. So before we get started, like I usually do on everyone, this is being broadcast on Rumble and YouTube and Podbean and Facebook. So if you're watching on any of those pipelines, uh, please do me a favor and like and subscribe to the podcast. And then please also share it out so your friends and neighbors can see this also, okay? Just a little video texting, just broadcasting my views on conservative messages for everybody to hear. And hopefully someone takes something away. I always value your feedback, so if you ever leave a comment or something on any of my platforms, just write me back, okay? Or you can send me an email at jp8report@gmail.com. That's jp8report@gmail.com. I always value your input. Can't do this by myself all the time, so give me some ideas. Shoot me a message one time, James. Hey, talk about this a little bit, and so I'll incorporate it. It gives everyone a chance for a little bit of feedback, because podcasts sometimes can be a dime a dozen. I've made it to episode 18 without giving up. I like doing this, regardless if it's 3, 4, or 5,000 people are listening to me. I feel like it's very important for people to talk and to get their views across, besides typing it out on a keyboard somewhere, which a lot of people do. So this is episode 18. The title of this one, I'm going to do a part 2. In case of emergency, break glass, part 2. Okay. What we're going to zero in on right now is that what I want to talk about is immigration. What is happening to my state, Texas, in our country. Okay. President Trump, when he was in office, tried so hard to get immigration under control. Not immigration, but illegal immigration under control. With what's happening down on the border in the RGV section, and all the way up through Del Rio and Laredo, El Paso, and then New Mexico and Arizona and California. The Democrats fought so hard for him not to build any more fence line or anything to keep people out. And as soon as Joe Biden took office, he signed an executive order to stop building the wall and the XL pipeline. But we're talking about immigration at this point. Now people, he had said several months ago, and people remember, everyone's going to be welcome into the United States. And when they planned it, so when he took office, they rushed the border. I call it an invasion practically, because it's uncontrolled access to our country. Nobody knows what's going on. We keep hearing things on the news about unaccompanied minors and being apprehended, and illegal aliens. They call them migrants. Illegal aliens going unimpeded into our interior. They'll send a group of people one way and be flooded with customs and border enforcement people to apprehend them. And while they're busy doing that, another group in another section will just rush across the border and disappear into the interior. That's wrong. Uncontrolled access to our borders. No country in the world allows that to happen. Pretty much. I don't understand why. If President Trump was so bad that he solved, for the most part, the border issue of having illegal immigrants coming into our country, why was that so bad that Biden and Harris they stopped it and allowed unimpeded progress to our country, migrants after migrants? And they're talking about thousands of people per day going across our border into Texas. They're setting up camps all over the place. I saw a deal, and my wife was showing me a news clip about in Arizona where their only athletic ball field in the entire state, in the entire city. All of a sudden, the federal government said, "Oh, we're building a holding facility there." Well, thank you very much to that mayor that had no clue that someone was going to come up and seize his public land, and now their kids and citizens have nowhere to go play. They're doing the same thing in El Paso. They're doing it on the border. They're doing it in Midland, in Dallas. They took the Dallas Convention Center and converted it into a 3,000 bed facility for unaccompanied minor men from ages 13 to 17 to hold them there for 21 days. What happens after 21 days? They ship them to other places in the United States. In Montana, Michigan, Colorado, Illinois, Ohio, Kentucky, Arkansas, Oklahoma, you name it, they're going. What does that do for the education in your town? And you got a straightforward education system. All of a sudden, 100 migrant children show up in your city, and they got kids, and they have to go to school, and you don't have an ESL program. So you got kids sitting in your classroom that don't understand English. In Texas, we solve that. We have a really good ESL program in the state of Texas. So ESL means English as a second language. Okay, and but not all states are like that. There's no requirement for it. Why? Okay, if you went to Montana, why do you need to know Spanish in Montana unless you wanted to? Okay, but that's what's happening. And they're not testing for COVID. Governor Abbott was on TV yesterday talking about they're finding 10% rates of COVID in the people that are coming across our border. And the only way they know that is because local municipalities are testing them before they get released on buses that go elsewhere to holding facilities. But we have no authority to stop them. That has to end. El Paso is the same way. Our governor is doing his job, and he's getting the point across. I have no idea why we as a country would settle for uncontrolled access to our borders. What are we getting when we have uncontrolled access to our borders? We get human trafficking. Okay? If you have no idea what human trafficking and you're listening to this, I have no way of figuring out which rock you're hiding under. But if you have been hiding under a rock and you want to know what human trafficking is, it's slave and sex trafficking. Okay? It's the exploitation of women and young girls and young men across our country. And there is a market for it. There are people that do it all the time. Okay? You see it all the time. Why would we allow this to happen? The next thing, drugs, hardcore drugs. Drugs like ecstasy and stuff like that, and methamphetamines, and marijuana, and all these drugs. And just what they'll do is like I said earlier, they'll flood the border with people, and then another section, they'll sneak drugs across. They'll build tunnels and sneak people across for their human trafficking, and at the same time through their drug trade. Why would you allow this stuff to happen to your city, state, or country? Why is the Biden administration allowing it and not even recognizing that we're in a crisis on our border? Someone said, as the president said, it was a challenge. It ain't no challenge. It's a crisis where you have CBE people that are, hold on just a second. Um, that are overwhelmed. And what you're going to do is you're going to drive your employees to a point of a breaking point, and they're just going to quit. So what do you do when your Homeland Security people are no longer available for border enforcement? People just unimpeded just cross the border. I talked about human trafficking. I talked about drugs. What about people that are coming to our country want to do us harm? Um, you know, there's always been organized crime in our country. You got families that'll sneak people in just so they can uh, fluff up their population and their family-owned organizations. You got gang members out there, the MS-13 guys and people like that. You have terrorists. There's got to be terrorists coming across the southern border. They say, "Hey, I can sneak in this way, and I'll go to Chicago, New York, Washington D.C., or filter in Los Angeles or Houston, and just wait it out." The Russians used to do all they do sleeper cells and wait for code words and stuff like that to happen. Um, there's got to be some type of accountability. Um, Someone's got to be in charge. Someone's got to exercise charge. If if the president and the Democrats will not solve this problem, us Americans have to. And how do we do that? You have to go to the polls. You have to vote these people out of office. You have to send letters. You have to voice your opposition to these politicians, and then get them out of office so we can take back our country. Um, they, the days are gone of these social networking warriors out there that's like all they do is complain, complain, complain. You got to get out there and take back your rights, and we can get this under control. We cannot survive as a country um, if we don't know who's here. Okay, you can't just flood our country and then all of a sudden make them all citizens and give them all the right to vote. That's what they're trying to do. They just want to try to increase um, their voter representation in the House and Senate and the presidency. Who are we fooling? Uh, Democrats may think this is going to work for them, but believe me, I read an article the other day. The Hispanic population, they're more conservative than you actually think. They may come across this border and you think, you know what? They're illegals. We're going to make them citizens. They're going to vote Democrat for the rest of their life. A lot of conservatives are Hispanic, and they'll stay conservative after they become citizens here. And you may find yourself in a position like, I messed up. Well, you messed up. We'll make them Republicans, and we have a very good state here. We'll welcome in them, but you have to do it legally. One of the problems of illegal immigration, okay, is wages and workers. Here in Texas, we have about 32 million people in Texas. And since RGV is the major point of infiltration to the United States, most of those people are probably going to try to stay in Texas before they get caught. And what does that do with workers and wages? Well, if you put 50,000 new workers in the United States, they're going to work for lower wages because they're just going to send the majority of that money back into to their home places and stuff. And so if you're able to work for lower wages, that makes less jobs available for Americans. And then they're unemployed. What do you do with them then? We used to have the E-Verify. Hardly anyone probably uses E-Verify anymore, but it needs to be made mandatory. So, we got people who want to make $15 an hour, but if you're working under the table, cash under the table, and you're willing to work for $8, $9 an hour. What does that do for that teenager or that adult that has to work minimum wage, and they're wanting to get $15 an hour, $14, well, and legal aliens working in their place, and they're able to get money under the table? What good does that do to the Americans that need that money to be able to survive on, and their families survive on, because they're not? Okay. And security. My suggestion is California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. They need to put the National Guard on the border and prevent these people from coming across. We got to do something. I mean, you can't use lethal force. We know that. But when you use a show of force with a person in uniform on the border, that tends to be enough to keep people from trying to breach. Okay. What's going on with the Triangle countries? The Triangle countries are the three Latin American countries. That would be El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Why are their populations running? I mean, if they're poor, I understand. There are a lot of poor countries in Africa, a lot of poor countries in Asia, and we don't let them just flood our borders and fly into our country, regardless whether if they have permission or not. Just because your country is poor doesn't give you, I heard the term economic amnesty. Economic amnesty out there. What does that even mean? There are different parts of the world that do different things, and they're brought up in different cultures. Money is not everything. But if you have a country that, like in El Salvador or Guatemala or Honduras, that are preventing their people from actually living comfortably, that's something that's got to be worked out inside their countries. If they have a gang problem, their military and their police force needs to solve that. That's not our job. We've dealt with it. They need to stay home. Those people need to stay home and stay away. And if they want to come to the United States, they need to do it the legal way. Get a passport, request visa, either an immigration visa or a worker's visa. And we accept people in our country all the time legally. Okay. I was. What happens to these three countries down there? Their people keep coming and coming and coming. Why don't we just form like Great Britain has? They have a Commonwealth. If most of their people are living in the United States, why don't we just form our own Commonwealth and let them? That's crazy. Well, you know why I'm thinking about that. That's crazy. But they need to keep their people in their countries. Mexico needs to keep them out of their country and keep them in their countries of origin. It's not always what we do or what Mexico does. It's also what those three triangle countries are doing. Okay, and we can't just grant amnesty to everybody to come into our country. Then we'll have the floodgates open and everyone rush across the border and declare amnesty, economic amnesty. I'm poor. I need a better job. Well, you have to start somewhere in your country. Maybe you need to change your government down there. And then the last thing I want to talk about for a couple minutes is this coming Thursday. I believe that's March 24th. There's going to be a presidential news conference. The first one, like 65 days from his swearing in. That's the longest president has ever went without a press conference in modern history, going back over 100 years. He hasn't delivered an address to the joint session of Congress. I know presidents, after their inaugural year, they have to give the State of the Union address by constitutional mandate. But when you're a new president, normally you have a joint session of Congress that's broadcast to the whole country so everyone can see what's going on and what your goals. And he hasn't even done that. They said he's too busy. You're never too busy for the American public. You should be looking forward to expressing your goals and interests to the people in the United States and tell us the current situation of the country and what you're doing. We're almost at the end of a pandemic that happened only once in the last 100 years from the severity. We got like 540,000 people that's died in a year. How about giving us a straight up, honest answer of what you did leading up to the election and how you scared everybody into living their life normal, and how you questioned, or Kamala Harris questioned the authenticity of the vaccine. I'm not going to take it if President Trump says take it. She did take it. Joe Biden took it. But, they won't give Trump any credit. But I'd like to know why they went that way, why they actually terminated the XL pipeline, why they turn on the spigot to all these people coming from Central America. Everything. I mean, he hasn't told us nothing except for Circle Back Jen keeps saying that he's just too busy to talk to the American public without a teleprompter. You know what? Destroy that teleprompter and come up and talk to us Americans and give us the answers that we're looking for. You might get a little bit of respect from everybody out there if the people actually knew where you're coming from, or let your President Harris talk also, since she likes to talk to foreign leaders around the world and stick by your side through thick and thin. She's not a president. She's just the vice president. The vice president. You know what the vice presidents do? They go to funerals. They take foreign trips. And in her case, she sits around and does nothing and waits for a 50-50 vote in the Senate, and then she has to go break the vote. We need answers. We don't need answers every 60 days from a president that doesn't want to talk to the American people without a teleprompter. That needs to happen. It needs to happen on a regular basis. Trump, when he every time he left the White House, he goes to the Marine One. He'd stop with the choppers. Wow, I still can't believe they just didn't turn the chopper blades off. But he'd answer questions for 20 minutes, 25 minutes before he'd get on his helicopter. I mean, I guess he was late to everything he went to. But he would talk to people in rope lines. He would talk to people, when there were rope lines. Press conferences all the time. When the coronavirus started, he gave news conferences every single day. He stayed in the limelight. But this president, I guess, he goes to bed early. We don't know because we don't see no schedules, no record phone calls, no engagements to people, no Zoom stuff, no virtuals. So as far as we know, he gets up at 9 o'clock in the morning and goes to bed at 6 o'clock at night. Prove me wrong, because we don't see nothing. Circle Back Jen says we don't need to know that stuff. There's other problems going on in the country that he's working on. He's working really, really hard on. Show us the proof. Come out there to American people and give us a speech, and then take questions for an hour and not know 9-minute answers. Just answer the questions, and let the American people with their newspapers and with their the newspapers that nobody hardly reads, and the CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News Channel, and Newsmax, OND, all these MSNBC, all these people ask legitimate, non-softball questions. I don't want to hear what's up with your dog, or How's your leg? We need to know about why the North Korean leader will not talk to you. Why did you say that stuff about Vladimir Putin? What are you doing in Ukraine? What's going on with China? Give us a full brief. What is going to happen on our southern border, which is my problem because I live in Central Texas. My wife, my kids, they all live here in Texas. What are you going to do to protect us? What are you doing about the wokeification of the U.S. military? The object of the U.S. military is not to play social games and teach everybody to be better citizens. You know what the priority of the U.S. military is? To close with, fight, and destroy the enemy. That's all. You train them to be warriors. You treat them like warriors. And if you can't be a warrior, you need to get out of the army. Their job is to defend us. Stop playing these stupid little games. Stop trying to manipulate the Congress and get people kicked out of the Congress because they legitimately lost their races. Like Miss Taylor, they're still trying to kick her out of the Congress. Leave her alone. She's a really a decent person. She's changed. You can't hold people back from their past all the time. We're all human beings. We all have at least one skeleton bone in our closet somewhere out there. It does happen. If you show me a person that says, I'm perfect, there's only been one perfect person that's ever lived on this earth. Okay? That's Jesus. That's the only one. Everybody else, we've sinned, we've made mistakes, we said something that wasn't right, we've wrote something that wasn't right. And if we're going to hold everybody accountable for everything they ever said without accepting their apologies, nobody will have a job. And then all the wrong people that are hiding stuff in their past will have that job. And then we're right back in the same position where we started from. Okay? So stop this blaming everybody for everything and just get in the mentioned Jesus a while ago. What is the method of forgiveness? How many times should you forgive someone? It says in the Bible, 7 times 70. Okay, you forgive them 7 times, and you forgive them times 70 more times. And like I tell people, 7 times 70 times 70. So you shouldn't run out of forgiveness for anybody. And we're not perfect. Let's just get over it. Let's get our country back and do what we need to do. All right? So this is James. I will talk to y'all later. Thank y'all for listening. Remember, JP8 report at gmail.com. You can see me on Facebook, Podbean, Rumble, and YouTube. I'll check y'all later.